The warning lights flashed across every screen in the Orbital Defense Command Center. Admiral Taeyang stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the data stream in. The numbers were staggering. 10,347 ships had just appeared at the edge of the solar system. They had dropped out of hyperspace with all the subtlety of a hammer striking glass. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," Lieutenant Yuna said from her station. Her voice was steady, but Taeyang could hear the tension underneath. She had been in the military for 8 years, but she had never seen a fleet this large. "Nobody alive had?" "Put it through," Taeyang said quietly. The main screen flickered and a face appeared. It was not human, but the translation software worked instantly. The alien had gray skin that looked like stone, with deep ridges running across its forehead. 4 eyes blinked in sequence, 2 on each side of a narrow nose. When it spoke, its mouth revealed rows of sharp teeth. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the alien said. Its voice was deep and carried absolute confidence. "I am High Commander Thurvax of the Valkyrie Empire. Your system now belongs to us. You have 72 hours to surrender all military assets, all resource extraction facilities, and all government authority. Comply, and your species will be allowed to serve the Empire. Resist, and you will be eliminated." The screen went dark. Silence filled the command center for exactly 3 seconds before the room erupted in controlled chaos. Officers began speaking rapidly into their headsets. Screens filled with tactical data. Somewhere in the back, someone cursed softly. Taeyang raised one hand and the room fell silent again. "Get me Dr. Hana," he said. "And send a message to President Kyungsoo. Tell him we need an emergency council meeting within the hour." 30 minutes later, Taeyang stood in the secure conference room 3 levels below the surface of the command center. President Kyungsoo sat at the head of the long table, his face showing the weight of his position. To his right sat Dr. Hana, a woman with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been studying alien languages for 20 years. If anyone could understand the Valkyrie, it was her. Around the table sat the other members of the Defense Council. General Wan from the Army, Admiral Sung from the Navy, Director Bei from Intelligence, and Captain Dongmin, who commanded the Stealth Reconnaissance Fleet. "Options," President Kyungsoo said simply. General Wan spoke first. "We negotiate. 10,000 ships is an impossible number. Our entire fleet is maybe 5,000 vessels, and half of those are patrol craft and transports. We cannot win this fight." Admiral Sung shook his head. "Negotiating shows weakness. They will take everything regardless of what we promise. I've read the reports from the colonies that tried to negotiate with the Valkyrie. Those colonies don't exist anymore." "Dr. Hana," the president said. "What do we know about them?" Hana pulled up a holographic display. Images of Valkyrie ships and cities floated in the air above the table. The Valkyrie Empire controls 43 star systems. They are a conquest species. They have never accepted a diplomatic solution when military force was an option. Their culture values strength above all else. They view mercy as weakness and negotiation as surrender by another name. "So we fight," Captain Dongmin said quietly. He was younger than the others, barely 40, but his eyes held something old and cold. "And we die fighting." "Maybe not," Taeyang said. All eyes turned to him. "They think we're primitives. They sent that message expecting us to panic. But look at their formation. Look at how they entered the system." He pulled up the tactical display. The Valkyrie fleet hung in space in a loose cluster. There was no defensive positioning, no screening elements, no scouts pushed forward. "They're not even trying to hide," Taeyang continued. "They think their numbers alone will make us surrender. They have no idea what we're actually capable of." Director Bei leaned forward. "Are you suggesting we've kept our capabilities hidden well enough that their intelligence is outdated?" "I'm saying their last contact with Earth was 200 years ago," Taeyang replied. "Before the second incursion. Before we built the defense grid. Before we developed quantum shielding and singularity weapons. They think they're facing the same humans who barely had fusion drives. President Kyung-soo was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at each person at the table in turn. If we fight and lose, the human race ends? If we surrender, the human race ends as a free species. Dr. Hana, I want you to send them a message. Hana nodded and pulled out her datapad. What should I say? Tell them they have 48 hours to leave our system, the president said. Tell them this is their only warning. General One's eyes went wide. Sir, they will see that as an insult. They will attack immediately. Good, Taeyong said softly. Let them come angry. Angry enemies make mistakes. 6 hours later, the message was sent. It was transmitted in perfect Valkyrie, using their own formal military protocols. The translation was exact. There was no room for misunderstanding. On the bridge of the Valkyrie flagship Dominion, High Commander Thurvax read the message 3 times. Then he began to laugh. The sound echoed through the command deck, a harsh barking noise that made his junior officers shift uncomfortably. They warn us, Thurvax said, his 4 eyes glittering with amusement. These primitives warn us. Raleth, what is our ship count? Sub-Commander Raleth, a smaller Valkyrie with darker skin, checked his display. 10,347 warships, Commander. Plus support vessels? And the humans? Intelligence estimates between 4,000 and 5,000 ships, mostly light craft. Outdated weapons. Primitive shielding. Thurvax stood from his command chair. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with muscles that rippled under his gray skin. Prepare the fleet for advance. We will reach their homeworld in 120 hours at current speed. I want to see these primitive faces when they realize their warning meant nothing. Commander, Raleth said carefully, should we perhaps scout ahead? Send a small force to test their defenses? Thurvax's 4 eyes focused on his second-in-command. Are you afraid, Raleth? I am cautious, Commander. Caution is for the weak, Thurvax replied. We are Valkyrie. We have conquered 43 worlds. These humans will be the 44th. Now give the order. The Valkyrie fleet began to move. 10,000 ships burning toward Earth with the confidence of those who had never truly been challenged. In the depths of space near Jupiter, Captain Dongmin watched the Valkyrie fleet on his sensors. His ship, the Shadow, was completely invisible to their scanners. It was one of 50 stealth vessels spread throughout the solar system, watching and waiting. Mark every ship, Dongmin said to his crew. I want tracking solutions on all of them. When this starts, I want to know exactly where every single enemy vessel is located. Yes, sir, his tactical officer replied. Sir, they're still not scanning properly. They're moving like they own the system already. They do own it, Dongmin said quietly. For the next 47 hours and 54 minutes. After that, we teach them the price of ignoring a human warning. Back on Earth, in the command center, Admiral Taeyong stood alone in the observation room. Through the massive windows, he could see the curve of the Earth below, the lights of cities twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere up there, beyond his sight, an enemy fleet was coming. An enemy that thought humanity was weak. An enemy that had ignored the warning. He thought about all the people down there on Earth, the billions who had no idea how close they were to extinction. He thought about his daughter, who was 7 years old and loved to draw pictures of spaceships. He thought about every human who had ever lived, every struggle and triumph that had brought them to this moment. We gave them a chance, he whispered to the empty room. We warned them. Whatever happens now, we warned them. He turned away from the window and walked back to the command center. There was work to do. 48 hours was not very much time to prepare for the end of the world. Or the beginning of something the Valkyrie would never forget. 20-4 hours had passed since Earth sent its warning. The Valkyrie fleet had crossed the orbit of Neptune and showed no signs of slowing down. High Commander Thurvax sat in his command chair aboard the Dominion, watching the primitive blue planet grow larger on his screens with each passing hour. Victory was already his. He could taste it. Commander, Sub-Commander Raleth approached carefully. I have concerns about the human silence. Thurvax did not look away from the screens. Explain. They sent us a warning 24 hours ago. Since then, nothing. No further communication. No visible fleet movements. No defensive preparations that our sensors can detect. Raleth pulled up a tactical display. It is too quiet. They are paralyzed with fear, Thurvax said dismissively. Their leaders are probably fighting among themselves right now. Some want to surrender. Some want to fight. They waste their final hours in debate while we advance unopposed. Perhaps, Raleth said. But our intelligence on them is 200 years old. What if they have developed new capabilities? Thurvax finally turned to look at his second-in-command. His four eyes narrowed. You forget yourself, Raleth. The Valkyrie Empire has crushed civilizations far older and more advanced than these humans. They are children playing with fire. We are the fire itself. On Earth, engineer Jae-sung worked in the underground facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. The room around him was massive, filled with servers and control systems that hummed with power. Above his head, disguised as floating ocean debris and dead satellites, 300 orbital weapons platforms waited in silence. Status report, Jae-sung said to his team. All platforms are green, his assistant replied. Capacitors are at 98%. Targeting systems are locked on the Valkyrie fleet. We can fire on your command. Not yet, Jae-sung said. He pulled up the countdown timer on his screen. 23 hours and 12 minutes remained. Admiral Taeyang wants them closer. Much closer. On the moon, Colonel Mero walked through the tunnels that honeycombed the lunar surface. These tunnels had been dug over 50 years, hidden from every satellite and sensor that might have looked down from above. Inside them waited weapons that could crack planets. Weapons that humanity had sworn never to use again after the third incursion had nearly destroyed Mars. She stopped at a massive blast door. Her handprint unlocked it and the door slid open with a hiss of pressurized air. Inside, 10 technicians worked at control stations. Above them, through reinforced windows, she could see the massive weapon itself. A gravitational accelerator 3 kilometers long, built into the moon's core. How long until we can fire? Myra asked the chief technician. Protocol extinction can be activated in 4 hours, the technician replied. But Colonel, if we fire this, the entire Valkyrie fleet will know where we are. That's the point, Myra said softly. Let them know. Let them see what happens when you ignore a human warning. The second message went out from Earth exactly 24 hours after the first. Dr. Hana had written it herself, checking every word 3 times to make sure the translation was perfect. 24 hours remain. You will not receive another warning. Aboard the Dominion, Thurvax read the message and smiled. His sharp teeth gleamed in the light of the command deck. They still think they can frighten us. How amusing. Raleth, what forces do they have in the outer system? Raleth checked his sensors. We are detecting a small fleet near Jupiter. Approximately 300 vessels. They appear to be their main defensive force. 300, Thurvax repeated. He laughed again. Send 2,000 ships? Crush them. Show these humans what happens when they issue warnings to the Valkyrie Empire. Within an hour, a detachment of 2,000 Valkyrie warships broke away from the main fleet. They accelerated toward Jupiter, their weapons already charging. The 300 human ships waited near the massive planet, not moving, not fleeing. Captain Dongmin watched from the shadow as the Valkyrie ships approached. He was nowhere near Jupiter. He was hidden in the asteroid belt, watching everything through quantum-linked sensors that the Valkyrie could not detect. They took the bait, his tactical officer said. Of course they did, Dongmin replied. Send the signal. Near Jupiter, the 300 ships suddenly scattered. They moved in perfect coordination, splitting apart and diving in different directions. The Valkyrie ships pursued, weapons firing, but they could not seem to hit anything. That was when the Valkyrie realized their mistake. The ships were not ships at all. They were drones. Simple automated craft with no crew, no weapons, and only one purpose: to lead the enemy into position. The Valkyrie ships found themselves deep in Jupiter's gravity well, spread out and disorganized from the pursuit. That was when the real weapons activated. Hidden in the orbital rings around Jupiter, disguised as rocks and ice, 300 weapons platforms came online. They were not ships. They were stationary fortresses that had been placed there decades ago, waiting for exactly this moment. Gravitational mines activated throughout the Valkyrie formation. These were not explosive weapons. They were far worse. Each mine created a localized gravity field of crushing intensity. Valkyrie ships were torn apart by forces that bent metal like paper. Hulls compressed. Engines imploded. Entire vessels were crushed into balls of twisted wreckage in seconds. The Valkyrie captains tried to retreat, but Jupiter's massive gravity made escape difficult. They had to fight against both the planet's pull and the artificial gravity fields of the mines. Ship after ship died, compressed into nothing by forces they could not fight. When it was over, 1,200 Valkyrie warships had been destroyed. The remaining 800 limped away from Jupiter, damaged and demoralized. Not a single human ship had been in the engagement. Not one human life had been risked. On the Dominion, Thurvax watched the disaster unfold on his screens. His 4 eyes blazed with rage. He stood from his command chair, his massive frame trembling with fury. "A trap," he snarled. "They led us into a trap." "Commander," Ralph said urgently, "we should reconsider. If they can do this, what other surprises do they have waiting?" Thurvax spun on his second-in-command. "Reconsider? Reconsider? They have destroyed Valkyrie ships. They have insulted the Empire. There is no reconsider. There is only vengeance." He strode to the communications station and shoved the officer aside. He activated the broadcast himself, sending it to every ship in the fleet and back to the Valkyrie homeworld. "All ships," Thurvax commanded. "We advance at maximum speed. No more caution. No more scouting. We will reach the human homeworld, and we will burn it to ash. Every city, every human. I want nothing left but ruins and memories." The Valkyrie fleet accelerated. 8,000 ships now, reduced but still overwhelming, burning toward Earth with rage instead of confidence. In the command center on Earth, Admiral Taeyang watched the Valkyrie fleet increase speed. He had expected this. Angry enemies always charged forward. It was basic psychology. "They will reach Mars orbit in 14 hours, Lieutenant Yuna reported. "The 48-hour deadline will expire in 12 hours. "Good," Taeyang said. He opened a channel to Engineer Jae-sung. "How is the defense grid?" "All platforms ready," Jae-sung replied. "The Valkyrie still think they are dead satellites in space debris. They have not detected any of them. Keep it that way until I give the word." Taeyang switched channels. "Colonel Myra, status of protocol extinction?" On the moon, Myra stood before the massive weapon. "We are ready, Admiral. But I need to know. Are we really doing this?" "Only if we have to," Taeyang replied. "But yes, Colonel. If it comes to it, we are really doing this." He closed the channel and looked at President Kyung-soo, who had come to stand beside him in the command center. "They had their chance," the president said quietly. "We gave them warning. We gave them time. They chose to ignore both." "Yes, sir," Taeyang agreed. "But that does not make what comes next any easier." "No," Kyung-soo said. "It does not, but it makes it necessary." Across the solar system, hidden in fold space that the Valkyrie could not detect, 5,000 human warships waited in absolute silence. They had been there for 3 days, hiding in dimensional pockets that existed just outside normal reality. The crews had trained for this. They had waited their entire careers for this. They would wait 12 more hours. And then the Valkyrie would learn what it meant to ignore a human warning. In space near Mars, automated sensors detected the approaching Valkyrie fleet and began final preparations. The asteroid belt stirred with hidden life. The moon's weapons charged to full power. Every orbital platform around Earth locked onto its designated targets. Humanity had given its warning. The enemy had not listened. Now came the lesson. The 48 hours expired at exactly 0600 hours. Earth Standard Time, the Valkyrie fleet had just crossed the orbit of Mars. 8,000 ships in a formation that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space, all burning toward Earth with weapons charged and shields raised. Admiral Taeyang had not slept in 36 hours. He stood in the command center, his uniform crisp despite the exhaustion that pulled at his bones. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. Every screen showed a different view of the approaching enemy. Every display counted down to the inevitable. "Admiral," Lieutenant Yuna said from her station, "Dr. Hannah is requesting permission to send one final message to the Valkyrie fleet." Taeyang looked at President Kyung-soo, who stood nearby. The president's face was gray with stress, but his eyes were clear. He nodded once. "Permission granted." Taeyang said. Dr. Hannah's voice came through the speakers as her message transmitted across every Valkyrie frequency. She spoke in perfect Valkyrie, her tone formal and final. "You were warned. You were given time. You chose to ignore both. What happens now is not our choice, but yours. We take no pleasure in what comes next. But we will not allow our species to die without fighting. This is your final chance. Turn back now." The response came quickly. High Commander Thurvax appeared on the main screen, his 4 eyes burning with contempt. "Primitive fools," Thurvax snarled. "You speak of choices as if you have any. You speak of fighting as if you have weapons that matter. Your world will burn. Your species will serve, and your warnings will be remembered only as the pathetic last words of a conquered race." The screen went dark. In the command center, nobody spoke for a long moment, then President Kyung-soo walked to stand beside Admiral Taeyang. "Do it," he said quietly. "Show them why we warned them." Taeyang took a deep breath. Then he opened channels to every military installation in the solar system. "All stations, this is Admiral Taeyang. Execute Protocol Absolute. Authorization Code Gamma 77 Alpha. All forces are weapons free. Engage at will." The asteroid belt came alive first. Valkyrie sensors detected massive power signatures appearing among the rocks. What they had assumed were mining colonies and research stations were revealed as military fortresses. Hundreds of them, built over decades, hidden in plain sight. Railgun batteries opened fire. But these were not conventional railguns. They used the asteroids themselves as ammunition. Rocks the size of buildings were accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed and launched at the Valkyrie fleet. The Valkyrie ships tried to shoot down the incoming asteroids, but there were too many, and they were moving too fast. The first wave of rocks tore through the Valkyrie formation like bullets through paper. Shields that could stop energy weapons were useless against solid mass moving at relativistic speeds. Ships exploded. Debris scattered. And still the asteroids kept coming. 1,500 enemy vessels destroyed, Lieutenant Yuna reported, her voice shaking slightly. "The Valkyrie fleet is breaking formation. They are trying to scatter." On the Dominion, alarms screamed throughout the ship. Sub-Commander Raleth gripped his console as the vessel shook from a near miss. "Commander," Raleth shouted over the noise, "we must retreat. We are taking massive casualties." "No," Thurvax roared. "We push through. All ships, maximum acceleration. We break through this ambush and destroy their homeworld." The Valkyrie fleet surged forward, leaving burning wrecks behind them. They were bloodied now, reduced to 6,500 ships, but they were not broken. Not yet. They cleared the asteroid belt, and for a brief moment, it seemed like they had made it through the worst. Then the moon opened fire. Colonel Myra stood in the control room, her hand on the activation console. "Fire protocol extinction," she commanded. The moon itself seemed to shudder. From hidden ports across the lunar surface, weapons that had been built in absolute secrecy unleashed their fury. Gravitational accelerators, quantum disruptors, Singularity cannons that fired miniature black holes that existed for only microseconds, but wreaked absolute devastation. The Valkyrie ships closest to the moon simply ceased to exist. They did not explode. They did not burn. They were erased from reality by forces that bent physics itself. 500 more enemy ships destroyed, Yuna reported. Her hands flew across her console, updating the tactical display faster than human eyes could follow. 6,000 ships remaining. They are still advancing. In fold space invisible to normal sensors, the human fleet waited. 5,000 ships of every class and configuration. Battleships and carriers. Destroyers and cruisers. And every single one of them equipped with technology. The Valkyrie had never seen. Captain Dongmin sat in the command chair of the Shadow, now surrounded by his entire fleet. He watched the Valkyrie ships approach Earth, watched them sail into the trap that had been prepared for them. "All ships," he said calmly into his communicator. "Prepare to decloak on my mark. Target solutions are uploaded. Fire on appearance. 3, 2, 1, mark." 5,000 human ships materialized out of fold space simultaneously. They appeared in a perfect sphere around the Valkyrie fleet, surrounding them completely. The Valkyrie found themselves trapped, with human ships in every direction. For the first time since the battle began, the Valkyrie fleet stopped advancing. On the Dominion, every sensor screamed warnings at once. Thurvax stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Where there had been empty space seconds before, now there were thousands of human ships. They had appeared from nowhere. They had surrounded his entire fleet. "How?" Thurvax whispered. "How did they do this?" Sub-Commander Release's voice was hollow. "Commander, we are surrounded. They have us in a perfect kill box. We must surrender." "The Valkyrie do not surrender," Thurvax said automatically. But his voice lacked conviction now. A transmission came through on every Valkyrie frequency. Admiral Taeyang's face appeared on their screens. He looked tired. He looked sad. But his voice was steel. "We gave you warning," Taeyang said. "We gave you time. You chose this? Every ship you have lost. Every life that has ended today. You chose this by ignoring our warning. This is your final opportunity. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of this system. Or we will destroy every single one of your ships. Choose now." Thurvax felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear, real, bone-deep fear. He looked at his tactical display again. 6,000 Valkyrie ships surrounded by 5,000 human vessels. The numbers looked good. But numbers meant nothing if the enemy had weapons you could not defend against. "We still outnumber them," Thurvax said, but he was trying to convince himself now. "Commander," Rella said urgently, "look at our casualty reports. We started with 10,000 ships. We are down to 6,000. We have not destroyed a single human vessel. Not one." Thurvax looked at the numbers. Raleth was right. For all the destruction they had suffered, they had not landed a single hit on an enemy ship. "All ships," Thurvax commanded, his voice hard. "Attack formation. We break through their line and we do not stop until Earth is ashes." The Valkyrie fleet charged. And the humans opened fire. Engineer Jaesung activated the orbital defense grid. 300 platforms that had been disguised as space debris came online simultaneously. They did not fire conventional weapons. They fired quantum disruptors that phased matter out of existence. They fired causality mines that hit targets before they were actually launched, creating impossible temporal loops that destroyed ships retroactively. The human warships added their own firepower. Each vessel was smaller than its Valkyrie counterpart, but each one was a masterpiece of human engineering. Shields that could deflect anything. Weapons that defied conventional physics. Engines that could outmaneuver anything the Valkyrie had. Captain Dongmin's ship, the Shadow, led the attack. He targeted the Valkyrie command ships, the ones coordinating their fleet movements. One by one he eliminated them. Without coordination, the Valkyrie formation fell apart. The battle was not a battle. It was an execution. Human ships danced through the Valkyrie formation, striking and moving, never staying still long enough to be targeted. Valkyrie weapons fired desperately, but they hit nothing. Human shields absorbed everything. In 2 hours, 4,000 Valkyrie ships were destroyed. Wreckage filled the space around Earth. Oxygen fires burned in the void where ships had been torn open. Escape pods drifted among the debris, carrying survivors who would tell the story of this day. On the Dominion, the command deck was chaos. Alarms blared. Officers shouted reports. Systems failed faster than they could be repaired. "Commander," Rala said desperately, "we must surrender. We cannot win this." Thurvax stared at the screen showing his fleet dying. His 4 eyes were wide, finally understanding. Earth had not been weak. Earth had been merciful. They had given warning because they had the power to back it up. They had given time because they wanted to avoid this slaughter. "Signal all ships," Thurvax said quietly. "Prepare to, sir." A singularity torpedo struck the Dominion directly. The ship's shields failed. The hull ruptured. Thurvax was thrown from his command chair as the deck tilted violently. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Earth on the viewscreen. Blue and beautiful and utterly untouchable, the Dominion drifted through space. Its hull cracked open like a broken egg. Emergency lights flickered inside the wreckage. Fires had been extinguished by the vacuum, leaving only twisted metal and the bodies of those who had not made it to escape pods. Hi. Commander Thurvax woke up in what remained of the command deck. His head throbbed with pain. One of his 4 eyes would not open properly. He tried to stand, but his leg was trapped under a collapsed support beam. Around him, a few of his crew moved slowly, checking bodies and trying to activate emergency systems. "Status?" Thurvax croaked. Sub-Commander Raleth appeared, his gray skin covered in dark blood. "Commander, you are alive." "That is something. The ship?" "Dead in space. Main power is gone. Life support is failing. We have maybe 3 hours of air left." Raleth knelt beside Thurvax and began working to free his commander's leg. "Half the crew is dead. The other half is either wounded or in escape pods." "The fleet?" Raleth stopped working and looked at Thurvax with all 4 eyes. "There is no fleet anymore, Commander." Through the shattered viewports, Thurvax could see the aftermath of the battle. Debris fields stretched in every direction. Valkyrie ships broken and burning. And moving among the wreckage, human vessels. They were not firing anymore. They were collecting escape pods and survivors. "How many ships do we have left?" Thurvax asked. 2,000, Raleth said quietly. "Out of 10,000? And those 2,000 are fleeing the system as fast as their engines will carry them." Thurvax closed his eyes. He had brought 10,000 ships to conquer a primitive world. In less than 3 hours of actual combat, he had lost 8,000 of them. And the humans had not lost a single vessel. A transmission cut through the static on the emergency channels. Admiral Taeyang's face appeared on the one functioning screen in the command deck. "Valkyrie survivors," Taeyang said. "This is Admiral Taeyang of the Earth Defense Forces. Cease all hostile actions and prepare to be recovered. Your wounded will receive medical treatment. Your dead will be treated with respect. This battle is over." Thurvax wanted to snarl defiance. He wanted to order his remaining ships to turn around and fight to the last. But he could not, because he knew now what he had refused to see before. Earth had never been weak. They had simply been giving him a chance he had thrown away because of his arrogance. "Commander," Rala said softly, "we need to signal our surrender." "Do it," Thurvax said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. 20 minutes later, human ships arrived at the Dominion. They did not fire on the crippled vessel. Instead, they extended boarding tubes and sent medical teams. Human soldiers in armor entered the wreckage with weapons ready, but not aimed. They secured the area quickly and efficiently. A human medic approached Thurvax. She was small, barely reaching his chest even though he was sitting on the floor. She had kind eyes and gentle hands as she examined his injuries. "Can you understand me?" she asked. Her words were translated by a device on her collar. "Yes," Thurvax said. "Good. I am going to give you something for the pain. Then we will get you out of here." She pressed an injector against his arm. Relief flooded through him almost immediately. My name is Dr. Ji Woo. You are my patient now. That means I'm going to keep you alive, even if you do not want me to. Why? Thurvax asked. Why help us? We came to destroy you. Wu looked at him with those kind eyes. Because you lost. The fighting is over. And we do not kill the helpless. She worked with her team to free Thurvax's leg and stabilize his injuries. Within an hour, he and the other survivors were transferred to a human medical ship. The medical bay was clean and bright. Humans and Valkyrie worked side by side to treat the wounded. Thurvax was placed in a bed. His injuries were serious but not fatal. As he lay there watching the humans save Valkyrie lives without hesitation, something inside him broke. Not his body. His understanding of the universe. The Valkyrie conquered through strength. They showed no mercy because mercy was weakness. But these humans had shown overwhelming strength. They had crushed his fleet utterly. And now they showed mercy to their defeated enemies. It made no sense to him, Captain. Dongmin stood on the bridge of the shadow, watching his crew work to clear the debris field. They had been fighting for 3 hours. Now they were doing the grim work that came after battle. Recovering the dead. Rescuing the living. Counting the cost. Final count, his tactical officer reported. 8,000 Valkyrie vessels destroyed. 2,000 fled the system. We recovered approximately 40,000 survivors from escape pods and damaged ships. Valkyrie casualties are estimated at 300,000 dead. Dongmin felt the weight of those numbers. 300,000 lives ended. Yes, they had been enemies. Yes, they had come to destroy Earth, but they had still been lives. People with families and homes and dreams, human casualties. He asked quietly. 17 dead. All from accidents during recovery operations. 43 wounded. No ships lost. 17 humans had died cleaning up after the battle. Not one had died in the fighting itself. It was a miracle. Or it was proof that humanity's weapons had advanced far beyond anything the Valkyrie could match. Sir, his communications officer said, Admiral Taeyang is ordering all ships to stand down. The surviving Valkyrie fleet is being escorted to the edge of the system. They are being allowed to leave? Allowed to leave? Dongmin repeated. We could destroy them easily. Yes, sir. But the Admiral says the battle is over. We made our point. Now we let them go so they can tell the galaxy what happened here. Dongmin nodded slowly. It was the right decision. Let the survivors run. Let them carry the story back to their empire. Let every species in the galaxy hear about what happened when you ignored a human warning. In the command center on Earth. Admiral Taeyang sat down for the first time in 40 hours. President Kyung-soo sat beside him. Around them, the command center was quieter now. The battle was over. The crisis had passed. We won, Kyung-soo said quietly. Yes, Taeyang agreed. But look at the cost. On the screens, they could see the debris field. Thousands of ships destroyed. Hundreds of thousands dead. And for what? Because one species had been too arrogant to heed a warning. They forced our hand, Kyung-soo said. We gave them every chance. I know, Taeyang said. But that does not make it easier. Dr. Hannah entered the command center, carrying a datapad. Admiral, President. I have been monitoring communications from the fleeing Valkyrie ships. They are broadcasting what happened here on every frequency they have. The entire Valkyrie Empire will know about this within hours. Good, Taeyang said. Let them know. Let everyone know. There is more, Hannah continued. We are receiving transmissions from other species. The Galactic Council has been monitoring the battle. They are requesting formal communication with Earth. President Kyung-soo looked at the datapad. What are they saying? Mostly questions. They want to know who we are, what our capabilities are, why we were not part of the galactic community before. Hannah paused. And they want to know if we are a threat. Are we? Taeyang asked quietly. That depends on them, Kyung-soo replied. We are not conquerors. We do not seek to expand or dominate. But we will not be conquered either. We will not be slaves. That is the message we need to send. In the detention facility where High Commander Thurvax was being held, he sat in a clean cell with a comfortable bed and regular meals. He was not tortured. He was not interrogated. He was simply held, but he was given access to Earth's data networks. He could read about human history, about their wars and their struggles, about the times they had been invaded before and barely survived. He read about the second incursion, when the Krill had attacked Earth with biological weapons. Humanity had nearly been exterminated. But they had survived. And they had learned, he read about the third incursion, when the Taukesh had tried to colonize the solar system. Humanity had fought back with such ferocity that Mars had been left a wasteland. Each time, humanity had been weaker than their enemies. Each time, they had been outmatched and outnumbered. And each time, they had won through desperation and determination and a refusal to surrender, but this time had been different. This time, humanity had not been weak. They had been patient. They had prepared. They had built weapons in secret and waited for the next invasion they knew would come. And when it came, they had given warning. Because they remembered what it was like to be the ones who did not listen. Thurvax understood now. The warning had not been a sign of weakness. It had been a gift. A chance to avoid the slaughter that would follow. A chance he had thrown away because he believed strength meant never showing mercy. He had been wrong. And 300,000 Velkari had paid the price for his mistake. 7 days had passed since the battle. Earth's orbit was slowly being cleared of debris, though it would take months to finish the job. The wreckage of 8,000 Velkari ships served as a monument to what happened when warnings were ignored. High Commander Thurvax sat in his cell, reading another chapter of human history. This one was about their ancient wars, back when they fought each other instead of alien invaders. He read about generals who offered their enemies a chance to surrender before battle. Not because they were weak, but because they were confident in their victory. The humans had always done this, he realized. Throughout their entire history, they gave warnings. Sometimes the warnings were heeded. Often they were not. But they always gave them. A guard appeared at his cell door. Commander Thurvax. Admiral Taeyang wishes to speak with you. Thurvax stood and followed the guard through clean corridors to a conference room. Admiral Taeyang sat at a table, looking older than he had during the battle. The weight of command had aged him visibly. Sit, Taeyang said. Thurvax sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Why did you give us a warning? Thurvax asked finally. You had the power to destroy us from the moment we entered your system. Why give us a chance to leave? Taeyang was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because we remember what it is like to be on the other side. We remember when we were the ones who did not listen to warnings. We remember how many of us died because we were too proud or too stupid to retreat when we should have. You are saying you gave me a chance because others gave you chances? No, Taeyang said. Others did not give us chances. They came to our world without warning and tried to kill us all. We learned to give warnings because we know the price of not giving them. We know what it is like to fight a battle that did not need to happen. Thurvax looked down at his hands. 300,000 of my people died because I ignored your warning. Yes, Taeyang said simply. And I'm sorry for that. But I'm not sorry for defending my species. You came here to conquer us. We stopped you. That is all what happens to me now. You will be held until arrangements can be made with your empire. Then you will be returned to your people. Taeyang stood. We are not monsters, Commander. We do not execute prisoners. We do not torture. We simply want you to understand that Earth is not weak. Earth is not prey. And Earth will not be conquered. Dr. Hannah worked in her office, preparing the message that would go out to the Galactic Council. President Kyung-soo had asked her to make it clear and direct. No room for misunderstanding. She had written and rewritten it a dozen times. Finally, she had something that felt right. To the species and governments of the Galactic Council, I am Dr. Hannah of Earth. Our species has existed in isolation for most of our history. We did not seek contact with the wider galaxy because we were not ready. We were fighting among ourselves, learning hard lessons about war and peace and the cost of both. In the past 200 years, we have been invaded 3 times. Each time we survived. Each time we learned. We built defenses. We developed weapons. We prepared for the day when another species would come to our world with conquest in mind. 7 days ago, the Velkari Empire arrived with 10,000 warships and demanded our surrender. We gave them a warning. We gave them time to reconsider. They chose to ignore both. The result is visible in the orbit of our world. 8,000 Velkari ships destroyed. Hundreds of thousands dead. And not because we wanted war, but because we refused to surrender. Earth seeks peace. We seek knowledge and trade and friendship with other species. But we will not be conquered. We will not be slaves. We will not submit to any empire or force that demands we give up our freedom. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. Approach Earth with respect, and you will find us welcoming. Approach with weapons and demands, and you will find the same fate that befell the Velkari. We are not your enemies unless you make us so. We are not your conquerors because we have no desire to rule others. We are simply a species that has learned, through blood and pain, that freedom must be defended. Consider this our formal introduction to the galactic community. We look forward to peaceful contact. But we will not hesitate to defend ourselves if threatened. The choice, as always, is yours. Hannah sent the message to President Kyung-soo for approval. Within an hour, it was broadcast on every frequency Earth could reach. It would take time for all species to receive it, but eventually, the entire galaxy would hear Earth's message. The responses began coming in within hours. Some species welcomed Earth, others expressed concern. A few made vague threats. But one response stood out. The Velkari Empire sent an official communication. It was brief and formal. They acknowledged their defeat. They agreed to peace terms. They would pay reparations for the attack. And they included one line that Dr. Hana read 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. The Velkari Empire apologizes for failing to heed Earth's warning. We will not make this mistake again. An apology. From a species that had never apologized to anyone in their recorded history. Earth had not just defeated them. Earth had fundamentally changed how they saw the universe. Engineer Jae-sung stood in the control room beneath the Pacific Ocean, looking at the schematics for Project Horizon. The orbital defense grid had worked perfectly during the battle. But that did not mean it could not be improved. We need more platforms, he said to his team. Double the current number, and I want them equipped with the new quantum disruptors that are still in development. Sir, his assistant said carefully. We just won a major battle. Do we really need to expand our defenses? Jae-sung looked at the young man. The Velkari came with 10,000 ships. We stopped them. But what if the next enemy comes with 20,000? Or 50,000? We cannot assume that one victory means we are safe forever. We must always be ready. Yes, sir, the assistant said. I will start on the designs immediately. On the moon. Colonel Myra walked through the tunnels one last time before she returned to Earth. Protocol. Extinction had been activated during the battle, but the massive weapon had not needed to fire. The orbital fleet had been enough. She stopped at the blast door and placed her hand on it. Behind that door was a weapon that could crack planets. A weapon that humanity had sworn never to use except in the most desperate circumstances. I hope we never have to use you, she said quietly to the door. But I am glad you exist. Captain Dongmin sat in the mess hall of the Shadow, sharing a meal with his crew. They had been in combat for 3 hours and recovery operations for 7 days straight. They were exhausted, but they were alive. Do you think they will come back? His tactical officer asked. The Velkari? Dongmin shook his head. No, they learned their lesson. But others might come. There are thousands of species in the galaxy. Some of them will see what happened here as a challenge. Let them come, one of the younger crew members said boldly. We will give them the same warning we gave the Velkari. And if they do not listen to the warning? Dongmin asked. The young crew member hesitated. Then we will do what we must. Yes, Dongmin said quietly. We will do what we must. But never forget the cost. 300,000 Valkyrie died because their commander ignored a warning. That is 300,000 lives that did not need to end. War should always be the last option, not the first. Admiral Taeyang stood alone in the observation room. Looking down at Earth, his daughter had visited him earlier, showing him a new drawing. This one was of human and alien ships flying together peacefully. She had asked him if that would ever be possible. He had told her yes. Because he wanted to believe it was true. President Kyung-soo joined him at the window. The Galactic Council has officially recognized Earth as a sovereign species. They are offering us a seat at their diplomatic table. Do we accept? Taeyang asked. Yes, Kyung-soo said. But carefully. We engage with them on our terms. We share what we choose to share. We keep our defenses strong. And we never, ever let them think we are weak. We are not weak, Taeyang said. We proved that. No, Kyung-soo agreed. We are not weak. But we are also not conquerors. We must find a balance. Be strong enough that no one dares attack us, but not so aggressive that we become the thing we fought against. Far across the galaxy, in a system Earth had never heard of, a warlord named Krev listened to the intercepted broadcast of the battle. He watched the footage of Valkyrie ships being destroyed. He read Earth's message to the Galactic Council. His military advisor stood beside him. Sir, this species defeated the Valkyrie Empire. Perhaps we should avoid conflict with them. Krev laughed. The Valkyrie were soft, overconfident. We are not. Prepare the fleet. We will show these humans what a real empire looks like. His scientist, an old female of his species, spoke up. Sir, please reconsider. The humans gave the Valkyrie a warning. A 48-hour warning to leave peacefully. The Valkyrie ignored it and lost 8,000 ships. Then they were fools, Krev said. Sir, the scientist said desperately, the humans only warn once. What you do with that warning determines if you have a future. Those were not my words. Those were the words of a Valkyrie survivor. Please do not make the same mistake Thurvax made. Krev stared at the scientist for a long moment. Then he looked back at the footage of burning Valkyrie ships. He thought about the message Earth had sent. He thought about the warning that had been ignored. Finally, he spoke. Stand down the fleet. We will not engage Earth, not now. Perhaps not ever. But we will watch them. And we will learn. The scientist bowed deeply, relief flooding through her. Across the galaxy, the story of Earth's warning spread. Species that had never heard of humanity now knew their name. The phrase human warning entered common usage in a dozen languages. It meant a final chance, an opportunity to avoid destruction, a gift that should never be refused. Some species would heed it in the future. Others would not. But they would all know that when humanity gave a warning, it was not a bluff. It was not weakness. It was not fear. It was mercy. And mercy from the strong was the most dangerous gift of all.